Listeners and viewers, I'd love to welcome you all to another episode of Just a Pod, hosted with the most. They call him Timofey. Just a Pod is a talk show that focuses most on African sexuality, matter, religion, family, music, and its role toward shaping us as a community. It's uploaded once a week on Tuesday from 7 a.m. Stay tuned on all our social platforms and subscribe if you haven't. Just a Pod, convo that matter.
So let me just read this. An accomplished executive with a robust background as a private company director and a seasoned career in management consulting, he excels in both corporate environments and startups ecosystems with over a decade in P&L. P&L?
P&E.
P&E, okay. P&E responsibility. He thrives in dynamic, turbulent settings, consistently delivering growth, change, and inspiration across multiple industries. As a hands-on leader, he is dedicated towards fostering innovation and achieving exceptional results, leveraging a comprehensive understanding of the global business landscape to navigate challenges and seize opportunities. He is called Hery Henry.
Hery Henry, yes, that's my real name. That's my actual name.
Is that the right introduction?
Shout out to my marketing team, guys. That sounds really convoluted and big. Thank you for writing all that up. But if I introduce myself, and I think they actually meant P&L responsibility, profit and loss responsibility.
Yeah.
If I'd introduced myself, I'd just say I had a corporate career. Before that, I was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Now I'm an entrepreneur, and what I do is I buy software businesses. That's what I do.
Okay. I read somewhere that you are an investor too.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any investments in Kenya?
I do. I've had a couple.
Okay.
I really like the ecosystem here.
Okay.
I think Kenya is fantastic. I think, contrary to some beliefs, Kenyans are hardworking, reliable,
Okay.
honest,
Okay.
great integrity. I have a team here for years now.
Okay.
They under promise and over deliver. They're very consistent. They're very, very good. I've recently had a startup investment fail here as well. I think that's always important to talk about as well. Most startups fail, even the ones that get investment. And so I've recently had one where it didn't work out, where the setup of the founders was wrong. They had the wrong people in the team. They didn't have anyone commercial who liked to sell. There was only product people, and no one who was actually knocking on doors or making phone calls. And I kept telling them, you guys need to sell. The product doesn't matter how good the product is. People are not going to just come to you.
Yeah.
And they ended up having no sales. And that's actually the number one reason why startups fail,
Okay.
is lack of sales. Number two is cash flow problems.
Okay.
Number one is no sales.
Okay. So the essence of the question actually derives from with the current political weather in Kenya. Do you think it's a perfect condition for investors to invest in Kenya?
So I think it's always a good time. I think, some investors at this moment, when the streets are the way they are going to hold back and are going to be careful and say, like, I'm going to wait this out. We don't know what happens. But good professional investors don't look at a 3-month period or a 6-month period. We look at 10 years, 15 years, right? And there the signs are very clear, right? East Africa is one of the fastest growing regions in the world. It's English speaking. It's got a middle class with spending power of 150 million people. So, this is a really good place to be. And let's remember, from a European perspective, we're in the same time zone, right? There's no problem with time difference. When you work with the US, you have a massive time difference problem. With Asia, the same, not between Africa and Europe. And I think, quite frankly, between us, we haven't made the most of that yet. I think there is so much more opportunity. I think history makes it sometimes a little bit difficult. We get hung up on history. I just invite everyone who's listening in Europe, take the leap. Come to Kenya, come to Tanzania, see it for yourself, invest, find partners.
Okay. So in short, let's dive straight into the topic of the day. I wanted us to measure specifically on emerging technology for business and sustainability.
Yeah, that's an interesting combination.
And so my first concern was on integration and scalability. How do you assess the potential for emerging technology to integrate seamlessly with the existing business structure?
Wow. So the flippant short answer is, if I knew the exact answer to that holistically, then I'd write a book and make a lot of money.
No, let's go with what you think.
But if we go into so if we dissect this a little bit, right? So the first thing is technologies that scale the unscalable are very interesting, right? So things that are previously very difficult to scale, but we can do it with technology. I'll give you an example from Kenya, okay? Zidalie. A lot of people struggle with the fact that their children go to school very far, yeah, and with public transport it takes 90 minutes, 2 hours one way. Zidalie basically sends mini buses to collect kids, like small school buses, and the school trip is 30 minutes. Now, running that kind of operation on paper would be very difficult, but they've done a software in which they can follow the drivers who are fully vetted and the buses, and the parents can always know where the kids are, and it goes really quickly. And that's a service where without the technology that wouldn't be possible. I'll give you another one, also Kenyan. It's Nikola Energy, very cool startup. They're actually an SME, but they've reinvented themselves recently. So they found that the biggest problem for smallhold farmers is that they don't have access to data in terms of how much do things cost in the markets, what can they get for their produce, and what kind of weather do they expect. They still don't know that. And so they've actually democratized, or are looking to democratize that data, so that they have a data model that is tap-in accessible to every single farmer out there. Complete game changer, right? And so when we're able to make something accessible to a large number of people through technology, that is the best kind of technology. Now, specifically on sustainability, I think, again, sustainability is just human behavior times data times innovation. So they're all multipliers for each other, and I think there's plenty out there, and Kenya has a number of really interesting sustainability startups.
But I feel like, then again, as much as we are talking about technology, there are some parents, considering the first example, there are some parents who are not, they don't know how to operate, they don't know how to move on with the new technology.
Not just parents, also corporate leaders, a large part of society. And this is a really big problem. I mean, when I hear this all the time, people come back, say, I didn't grow up with social media, I didn't grow up with this. I just keep telling them, look, you didn't grow up driving a car either, or with a mobile phone, and you figured it out. We cannot be intellectually lazy at this time, or we fall behind. There's nothing left of your small or even big business if you don't hurry up and learn to use the tools that are at your disposal. And people come to me and ask, so what should I do with AI? What are the tools for my sector? And I keep telling people, look, you haven't even started, right? So just go on your computer and tell me what software you've already installed, like say Microsoft Outlook for your emails. And a lot of these technologies softwares now have an AI component to it. You just haven't tested them because you haven't thought about it. You're thinking it's this weird big solve all that's going to come from somewhere that you're going to plug in and play with it. But actually, it's highly likely that some of these components are on your computer, and other people who use the same software as you are now outperforming you and doing things 30-50% quicker because they're using, let's say, Microsoft Copilot while you're not. So actually, don't wait for anyone to come and save you. You just need to pick yourself up and invest 20 hours. Yeah, and let's say 10 hours. Right? We can all use 10 hours to do something, but most people don't do until it's too late. Can you just block an hour a day for 10 days and you educate yourself in a focused manner? You put your phone aside, you go on your computer, all you focus on is you learn about AI, about what it can do for you for 10 hours. And I can guarantee you it'll change how you think about these things and how you communicate about these things.
If I might digress for a bit, I remember the last time we were talking, I asked you a question, but I didn't get a clear picture of it when you answered. So I wanted to know, when you're specifically looking to invest, maybe in a startup, in a software startup, let's say, what do you specifically look for?
So, 3 things really. First thing is, do you already have sales? In my mind, the times when you can get a high valuation for just an idea are over in most cases. So have you got a proof of concept? Secondly, is this scalable? And thirdly, and most importantly, I'm going to look at you, the entrepreneur. Yeah. And I can tell you, and this is my mistake, because I always think the best of people and I want people to win so badly. But the last 3 times an investment hasn't been a good investment for me, I knew this from the start somehow. I was just hoping the person would change and actually do what's necessary.
Okay.
But the person wasn't the right kind of person to do what's necessary to actually run a business. Like, leave some friends to the side and actually go and pick up the damn phone and actually make phone calls and sell your product. And I kept saying, and I asked people that. This is a bit of a trick, right? So I asked them, who are the first 5 people you're going to call and ask them if they're going to buy your product? And then they come up with it and say, can you do it now? Oh, but the product isn't ready. It's like, no, can you do it now? The other one thing I do is I say, can you go to a coffee shop 10 times and ask for a discount? And it's not about the discount. It's whether you have the guts to get over yourself to have that conversation. And if you can't do that, we can't work together because it's not gonna be good.
Okay. So let's talk about in evaluating your investment in emerging technologies. How do you balance the financial returns with sustainability metrics?
So, first of all, legislation is doing its part in this, right? So if you're not hitting sustainability metrics, or you don't have a robust sustainability strategy and sustainability KPIs, you're not going to be in the market, right? We already see it in Europe, in parts of North America, especially in Canada. If you don't hit those metrics, you're not allowed to be in the market. So actually, the alignment happens almost automatically because there is a very big financial cost to not hitting sustainability targets. Lots of examples, right? So for instance, in the European Union, you can now get loans which are based on hitting green KPIs. The loans have a worse interest rate for you as a company if you don't hit those. They have very favorable terms if they do hit those, right? But also regulation that says, for instance, all your packaging has to be monomaterial, or you can't use aluminium in baby food pouches as an example, otherwise you pay a very heavy tax, right? So I'm quite confident, and I'm grateful to the legislators, because we need the legislation to provide us with a level playing field. Other than that, let's not forget, as much as a company's job is to make a profit for its shareholders and take care of its stakeholders, humans work in companies too, right? And you go home and you talk to your children and you want to be proud, and your kids say, Daddy, Mommy, what is it that your company does? And you want to be able to tell them with pride in your eyes that you're doing the right thing consistently as a company.
Let's say, apart from money or wages or salary, what do you think is another factor that can motivate workers to be working in a company, that are working in a company?
Well, community. So we spend about half of our waking time at work, right? So that's only good if we actually enjoy what we're doing and we enjoy the community. Okay. So building a good, strong culture, or a community culture in your workplace, absolutely essential today. The other thing is, I think people want to know what the vision is. Where is this going, right? So what's the future for me? What's the future for the company? And the more you're able to articulate the path, not just of the company, but also of the employee, the individual, the better. I'll give you an example that's not intuitive. American tobacco, right? So probably not, the best reputation or connotation in people's minds when we talk about the big tobacco companies. American Tobacco, a couple of years back, first they said, we need to have the best graduate program out there, because otherwise we can't keep people. And they built the best graduate placement program. Wow, that's a good one. So I'm a bit torn on this question for one simple reason, in that I think corporate has over-engineered the use of KPIs in the last 15 years massively. I see companies that have gone from 3 to 6 to 20 personal KPIs. Okay. So people actually have to hit 20 targets, and then they become meaningless. And I think what I've tried to do for our companies is, I made a similar mistake. I thought when we measure everything, that's going to be great. Everyone's going to be held accountable, but it just distracts. And so what we've done is we've massively clawed back the amount of KPIs we use, and we've gone back to saying, like, okay, what's actually our mission? Our mission is to change life for the better for our clients, for example, in certain ways. So why don't we start measuring whether we're on track in terms of being at the cutting edge of innovation, whether we're on track And sometimes these measures, these KPIs are quite subjective, right? So they're not necessarily as measurable. Whether we're a good employer and people like working with us, whether our customers are happy with us, and being a respected member and a liked member of the business community and among your clients, it, to me, is a value in and of itself. And I think I'm sort of moving more and more in that direction rather than sort of hard KPIs.
Okay, it's been like in a span of 3 months since we had our last session. So I was going to ask this: within the 3 months, have you invested in another venture? Have you bought a new venture?
Yes, I actually have. Yeah, actually interesting. So
How many so far?
So the big one that we bought just a month after we saw actually is a software development and digital marketing company called INA4, INA4. And they're about 2.5 million in revenue. Really, really powerful company. Cutting edge at digital marketing campaigning, also website building and digital app building. So very exciting and very much. The interesting thing there is when you've got that, it complements virtually everything else you do.
Okay.
So imagine you have a product company that does one software really, really well, and you haven't done much marketing before, and now we can put you on steroids because we've got the digital marketing agency in-house, right?
Yeah.
We can really grow you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's that I've done. Then I've invested in a smaller venture that's close to my heart. I can't talk too much about that yet, and then I'm scoping out an investment in Mauritius at the moment to be even more back in East Africa. So we'll see.
How do you feel?
Right now, extremely tired, and I think everyone can see that. But that's because the evening ended at 2, and I was back at work this morning at 8. So.
Okay, nice that you've answered that, but I was just asking how you feel now that you've invested in new companies.
Oh.
What's your feeling? How do you feel about the companies and their growth?
So it's an interesting one, and I'm weird that way. So I feel really good about what we're doing here, and I feel really good because I 100% believe that this is the right thing also for the people in those companies. That's really important to me. When you run small to medium-sized businesses, it's all about the people. If they leave, you have nothing. So I'm really, really happy about that. But on a personal level, I'm always happy but never satisfied. I guess it's the typical entrepreneur thing. So the moment we signed that deal, I celebrated for like 15 minutes, and then I was thinking, okay, so what are we doing next? Like, what are the next steps? That was like, done and dusted. Like, how do we've moved to, in 1 year with this new venture, right? So Stronger Business Partners, the private equity side, is a new venture. So in 1 year, we've gone from 800,000 pounds sterling in revenue to over 4 million, so about $5 million in 1 year. But now we're looking, can we hit 10 by the end of the year? Can we do 20 next year, right? So you're in that mode because you're hungry. A personal best is actually now the minimum requirement, isn't it? If you're a high jumper, the highest you jumped in the last competition, that's at least what you want to achieve, right?
Yeah, I can tell you have some crazy financial projections, but it's okay.
Good. They should be.
So I was to ask you, which investment did you make that you felt like it didn't bring too much returns?
That's a good question, but can I just riff on that for a moment where you said you have crazy financial projections? Yeah. If your dreams don't scare you, then they're not big enough, right? And it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true nonetheless. So you should always be asking yourself, you look at your big target and you say, what would it take? Who do I need to become as an entrepreneur in order for me to hit those targets? What has to change? Because if you're not doing that, you're not pushing yourself. You're not learning fast enough, right? You're in a rut. Yeah. Lots and lots of investments that haven't gone well, and not just investments, also just sort of failures within the companies that I've had. And the very healthy thing about all these things is that even though sometimes other people are responsible with their actions, I'm accountable. So I can't blame anyone else because I'm the entrepreneur, right? The buck stops with me.
But I can just say there's always that one that you feel like this was the poorest of all investment that I had.
So it's always the latest failure, right? So I'll give you just an example. So recently I invested in a company where I saw from the get-go they had a really good product, but they had no one to sell that product, and then the product is kind of meaningless. And they weren't able to hire against that. And I kept saying, if you don't sell, you're going to run out of cash. Okay. And you're not going to get more cash, because what investors are going to see is you didn't do anything with the cash. You just fiddled with the product, but you actually didn't go and ask anyone whether they wanted the product. And so you've built art. You've made art. piece of art,
Okay.
but not a product that can sell in a market. But if we look at this from sort of a more macro point of view, so my path is riddled with all kinds of failures, and I guess I'm an eternal optimist, so I move past those quite quickly. So tangibly, if I look at my 20s, for instance, I was too certain. And that served me well as an early entrepreneur, because that certainty in your path, where you say no to people who have a different opinion, means that you get stuff done. But then when you grow from let's say 10 employees to 20 or 30, at that stage you need the opinions of other people and you take them along. And I realized that, and then I listened to people too much in my early 30s. So actually it broke the culture of the company, and it broke what we had, because I wanted to make sure that everyone is heard, and I'd read somewhere that it's a really good idea to absolutely listen to everyone, which is true. But at the end of the day, if you own the company, the buck stops with you. You still make the decisions in the end, right? And not everyone has to like those decisions. But I was very self-conscious I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be liked so much that I made bad decisions or didn't make decisions on the back of it. And I find now that in my 40s, I've kind of found that balance where I listen to people very carefully, and if I make a different decision, I explain very carefully to them why I'm making that decision. Yeah. All my worst failures have to do with humans. It's never been products, it's never been finance. So it's always been that someone's been really unhappy with me, or something didn't work out, or they thought they could be something in my company or in my orbit that then they didn't end up being. And then they end up blaming me. And so I think for every 10 people who thank me, there'll always be one person who says basically I wasted their time or I ruined their life or whatnot. And I've found that is just a lot of the entrepreneur. That's just how it's going to be.
And now that you've talked about decision making, what's your process of decision making?
So I have two processes. So my personal one, my personal one, and then I've got the one that's for what we do as a company.
No, let's focus on the personal.
And the personal one is I try to gather as much information as I can, as quickly as I can.
Okay.
But I try to decide quickly, because a lot of the time not making a decision and having analysis paralysis is much worse. So not making a decision is a decision too. It means that you're not moving on something. You're not giving people clarity. So I prefer deciding very, very quickly, and I'm happy to correct if that was wrong, or I'm happy to be told that I was wrong, and I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. I have no ego around that. But a lot of the time, making a decision creates momentum. Momentum creates action, and action creates experience and knowledge that you don't get by analyzing.
Okay.
And I think, and I do want to riff on the organizational decision making. I'm a great friend of me making as little decisions as possible, people being really autonomous, and then getting decisions wrong, and that's fine, because you're going to take 10 decisions and one of them was horribly wrong. You still made 9 good decisions. If you had waited on me for all those decisions, you would have made maybe 2. And one of them would have still been wrong, right? So I want decision making has to be decentral as much as possible. I'm actually sometimes confused why people ask me, because they know that they know better than I do, right? So software developers, for instance, they're like, should we use this language? And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, man. Like, just, you know, so I have this famous phrase which annoys the hell out of my employees, which is, what would you suggest? And then I get their idea, and that works really well. But of course, it's also, you know, I want people to make their own decisions.
Do you see yourself investing more in the East African bloc, specifically Kenya?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, think about, just anyone listening, think about this, right? Your current generation between 20 and 35 is the most educated this continent has ever had. And has the highest level of technological affinity of any nation anywhere. Think about it. You went straight to mobile phones, straight to M-Pesa, right? So this is such an opportunity, because when you invest, you don't just invest in a faceless entity in a company. You invest in the people that you work with. And you know, the team that's with me today here in Kenya, we've worked together for 3 years. No one's left, so I must be doing something right. I haven't gotten rid of anyone, so they must be doing everything right.
Oh, they love the money too much.
Yeah, but you can get money elsewhere as well, right? So you're not hostage to that. Plus, you could also do a bad job, and I wouldn't always notice, because you're here and I'm in London most of the time. But they don't. They do a great job. The only guy who's left temporarily got a really dream job in Doha. So he's gone for 2 years. And because of his loyalty, he actually, before he even told me that he's leaving, he made sure that he has a like-for-like replacement that is just as good as he is. So who wouldn't want to invest in that? You know, who wouldn't want to invest in that kind of vibe, those kind of people?
Okay. So this one. Do you support politics?
Support not. I'm interested in politics. I am interested in how it shapes our future. But I don't have party affiliation, and I will never do. I am a strong believer in that politics should set the framework and the playing field, and then let humans play on it. Because we can solve any problem as long as we're left alone. So the only thing that we really need is societal peace. If you look at the societies that are the most prosperous, what sets the Swiss apart? It's not that they're hiding everyone's money in their mountains. It's because they've had 420 years of peace, uninterrupted, right? So every generation has built something and the next generation has inherited. I have friends in Switzerland who are the 8th generation in a row to inherit the same home. And they build on top of that, right? So that's what we need. So when people get all self-righteous and angry about things, let's remember the most important thing for you to build something for the future generations, or for yourself, for your own family, for your legacy, is societal peace, and that should trump everything else.
Is it right to say that you're only interested in politics, mostly when it comes to because you're an investor?
No, I'm a human being first and foremost. So I'm really interested in politics, but I'm not religious about politics, so I really try to understand. So let's take American politics. It's far enough away from Kenya, right? So I would, if I was in the US, I'd probably vote Democrats. But I have many friends who vote Republicans, and so I find it very interesting to have those conversations with them. I don't have to have conversations with Democrats because I already lean that way. I need to have conversations with the others. And for me, politics is interesting because if we do it right, even though you have an opposing view of mine, it can bring us together because we have a starting point for our discussion. And I think that's really, really important.
You've probably heard about the Gen Z protest in Kenya.
Yes, very interesting.
What's your take on that?
So I think you're well ahead of many countries. So for all the drama and the negative things that are happening, of course, there's bad things happening within that. Yeah. But when you think about this in a macro sense as well, how many African countries can say that they have largely peaceful protests of highly educated people who are fairly clear in what they want and what they don't want, and where, on the other hand, hopefully no one gets angry with me about this, there are at least elements of the government who clearly are frightened enough or are worried enough or are taking an interest enough to seek that conversation. So if we look at how much the protests together with the well-meaning politicians have achieved in 4 weeks, take this back 10 or 20 years, would that have been possible? I don't think so. Because people wouldn't have even been able to articulate in the way current Gen Z does. So I'm and you see this nowhere else in the same way. You see attempts now a little bit in Nigeria, a bit in Uganda, but I feel like Kenya has come a really long way from the election before the last, not the last one, but the one before that, which was quite rough. And I think as a society, you have developed wonderfully in terms of, despite all of it, and despite social media showing you only the bad bits, there being really good conversations going on. And I think that's great. And once again, that makes me want to be here and see the story evolve and do my bit to provide employment and other opportunities.
Okay. So as we are coming to the end of the session, what's your key takeaway from the setting, from what you're having, your team?
I mean, from the setting here, I mean, Nairobi is kind of a spiritual home to me. I really like the vibe of Nairobi. I feel incredibly welcome here. I find people joyful and reliable, and people work with business here has great integrity. I've really enjoyed my time every time I'm here. It's great talking to you again. Yeah. It's always good, and listeners, you have a great future ahead of you. I think Kenya is going places, and I think maybe just to be somewhat cautious in that. Rome wasn't built in a day. Good businesses aren't built in 3 months, and good countries when you're changing things also aren't built in 3 months. So keep going, and it'll be good. It'll be good.
Yeah, I really want to appreciate your team out there for putting readable and editable material on the blogs. As to why I used some of your material to generate questions. I really want to appreciate also Mercy. She's doing a great job. Communication is top notch.
Shout out to Mercy Mutana, yes.
If she's listening or if she's watching.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've come to the end of the session. I'd love you as a viewer to go online and view the session or listen on all our audio platforms. And remember, we have a session actually running. We recorded like 3 months ago. And I'm always glad for you coming always when you're around the country visiting.
Yeah, I think we should do a podcast on specific failures, where we can go through sort of things that typically fail in businesses, and I can give you examples of how I've completely fallen on my face with those, because I think they'll be both funny and educational for our viewers.
Yeah, I think next time when you come, because you're already living. So until next time.
Until next time.
I appreciate
Pleasure
you.
As always.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Kuwa na safari njema. Have a nice journey.
Have a nice day.